This word in your ear, Mark, is brought to you thanks to NordVPN.
Our old pals.
Absolutely. And you're now in a position to remind people what VPN stands for.
I think you'll find it's virtual private network. I'm fairly confident about that.
Say that one more time.
Virtual private network.
That's absolutely correct. And you probably also know that virtual private network, by now you know, it's a way to keep your data safe on the internet whenever you're logging in, either at home, Mark, or abroad. Either at home or at an internet cafe or wherever you choose to wander. VPN protects your identity and encrypts your data so that nobody can steal that identity. But there's a fun part as well as the responsible part.
Come on.
The fun part is it enables you to sidestep the region restrictions governing streaming channels and so forth overseas, because you can access the internet via servers in more than 50 different countries, and you can get stuff from all over the world. And this week I've been back on my old favourite, Netflix Sweden, which, as we've discussed in previous podcasts, is a fantastic source of old black and white films straight from the UK, strangely enough. I'll tell you what I was watching.
Perfect. It's just what we want.
I'll tell you what I was watching yesterday. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you ever seen Went the Day Well?
No, I haven't.
Oh, my God.
An expression that Danny Baker uses all the time. Yeah, is it good?
Went the Day Well is, I think Graham Greene wrote the script, actually. It's a wartime film, and basically it's set in an idyllic English village. Into the English village come a troop of soldiers to seal off the village to do a military exercise. But it slowly dawns upon the villagers that these are not British soldiers. Okay, can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And so I won't spoil it any further, other than saying later on we're treated to the enthralling sight of the young Thora Hird with a rifle.
Oh my God!
Shooting Germans.
I can't imagine that.
There is no higher recommendation for a film, as far as I'm concerned.
She'd be a formidable opponent.
Absolutely, but the key thing about Went the Day Well
tooled up Thora Hird
is not the action; it's the village. It's the notion of the idyllic English village, which lies so deep in our souls, that idea, you know what I mean? The vicar
being wrecked by Germans.
The vicar on his bicycle, the pub,
croquet, probably
all that kind of thing.
Leather on willow.
It's just absolutely perfect. So anyway, Went the Day Well's my current recommendation of
brilliant
hot films from the 1940s. So you can take advantage of a deal where you can try NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com, your ear, or just use the code your ear to get a discount off your NordVPN plan and one additional month for free, plus a bonus gift. It's a tiny working model of a young Thora Hird with a shotgun.
I want one.
It's risk-free because there's a
life-size
30-day money-back guarantee. Full details, as ever, on the show notes below.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Okay, David, it's the slight return of Stack Waddy. I've got one for you, which I've just knocked together. It's non-music, it's literary, and it's associated with, you'll love this, Marvel comics. Okay? Yeah. So,
am I
try. Some Marvel characters have got deliberately, prosaic and bookish names. And it's much the same with the unvarnished, regular-sounding pseudonyms used by famous writers. So, which are which? Marvel superhero or literary nom de plume? Okay? Clint Barton. Writer or interstellar fighter? Clint Barton.
Writer.
No, Clint Barton is the skilled marksman, archer, and former circus performer, and minor supervillain turned member of the Avengers. Frank Castle.
Writer.
Again, no, he wages a one-man war against crime as the Punisher. Richard Bachman.
Superhero.
It's Stephen King. That's a Stephen King pseudonym. Tony Stark.
Writer.
Tony Stark is the man who doubles as Iron Man. So you've got naught so far, okay? Clive Hamilton.
Superhero.
It's C.S. Lewis's pseudonym, which I didn't know. Agatha Harkness.
Writer.
This is just genius. I've had naught out of 6. Why should you get them right? The centuries-old witch Agatha Harkness uses her potent spells to protect others and train powerful beings in the art of magic. Mary Westmacott.
That is a writer.
It is.
And I know who it is. I've forgotten. Go on.
It's Agatha Christie.
There you go.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You'll know this one. Robert Galbraith.
Writer.
J.K. Rowling. That's right.
Yes, yes.
Paul French.
Writer.
Paul French, yes, was Isaac Asimov. And the last one, Abigail Brand.
Is that a writer as well?
No.
That's
Somebody
a
who's born and
superhero.
raised on the planet Axis with an extraterrestrial father and a woman from Earth.
Oh, God.
And she inherited the X gene. There you go.
So you trounced me. I'm going to.
Well, that was very unfair because it's not really it's neither of our kind of main areas, is it? But there we go. Go on. What have you got for me?
Okay, 6 songs that were supposed to be James Bond themes,
Okay.
but one of them is made up. Okay.
Yeah.
So these were 6 songs that were intended to be James Bond themes, but didn't make the cut.
Okay.
One of them was made up. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go, Mark Ellen. You're in the hot seat. Johnny Cash, Thunderball. Johnny Cash, Thunderball.
Okay. Yeah.
Radiohead, Spectre. Radiohead, Spectre.
Yeah.
Pulp, Tomorrow Never Dies. That's Pulp, Tomorrow Never Dies. Alice Cooper, The Man with the Golden Gun. Alice Cooper, The Man with the Golden Gun. Prince, Octopussy. That's Prince and Octopussy. And finally, Pet Shop Boys and the Living Daylights. Pet Shop Boys and the Living Daylights.
So are you saying those are all real songs that were
those
actually
are all
recorded?
6 songs that were put up to be James Bond themes and were rejected, but one of them is made up. Only one of those 6, Mark, is invented.
God, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Johnny Cash, Thunderball. I believe that. Johnny Cash is the sort of person they would ask on board. Radiohead also they would ask because
You see, can I just point out? Can I just interpose here?
Yeah.
In my researches for this, I made an important discovery. People don't get asked to do James Bond themes. People asked to do James Bond.
Oh, right. So
themes.
that's
how. So
they pitch
basically,
them.
they pitch them.
So
they want.
You write a song called Thunderball and say this is
you
the one.
record it. You know, you because it makes such a difference to people's careers. That they want to do it, and also reasons of kind of artistic ego and all kinds of things. So. You would be correct in saying that Johnny Cash actually recorded a song called Thunderball.
Right. But it was turned down.
It was rejected.
And I'm saying Radiohead did the same. Possibly because they're opportunists, and who wouldn't? Big cash involved. Alice Cooper, yeah. Prince Octopussy. Again, that seems so obvious that he would record a song called Octopussy. It's probably him. He's probably the ringer. I'm going to say it's the Pet Shop Boys because I just can't imagine the Pet Shop Boys somehow thinking that an association with James Bond was a good thing. But I'm going to be wrong.
You are wrong because Pet Shop Boys did it, Alice Cooper did it, Pulp did it, Radiohead did it, Johnny Cash did it, but Prince and Octopussy is the one that I'm.
Oh, right.
So
I wasn't far off. I kind of smelt a rat there.
I'm sorry.
That's very good. I like it.
So, yeah, and I've heard Johnny Cash's Thunderball only this morning, and it's extraordinary. Because in the end, I think Shirley Bassey did Thunderball, didn't she?
Yeah, she did, I think.
With the kind of standard John Barry, Wagnerian swagger.
Yeah.
Whereas Johnny Cash's Thunderball still sounds like Folsom Prison Blues, really. It kind of doesn't really work. So anyway, that's the Stack Waddy game, and if you've got any suggestions for further rounds of the Stack Waddy game,
please send them in.
To the usual
Always
address.
The Word Podcast. Prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
Can I just say at this stage, because I may as well say it at this stage, if you're listening to this, can you make sure that you kind of like it and favourite it and subscribe and all that usual stuff, because now's a good time to do it, and it makes an awful lot of difference to us. And if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff, it really helps spread the love, as I think they say.
It does.
Talking of spreading the love, we've both been watching a wonderful 3-part documentary, which is on Netflix at the moment, which is called Trainwreck.
Trainwreck, Woodstock '99. It is fantastic. Oh my Lord, we've been texting each other furiously. It's absolutely extraordinary. 3-parter, 45 minutes. What is it, about 2.5 hours long? Something like that, isn't it?
This one's probably not even that long. It's very easy watching. And just a bit of background. So the original Woodstock, 1969, was the first thing about the original Woodstock. It didn't take place at Woodstock because they had to move it at the last minute to Bethel, And so it was chaos. Far too many people turned up, and they had to make it free. But anyway, it was rescued by Warner Brothers, who made a very successful film out of it. So the
album sales.
Absolutely, and the legend of Woodstock carried on through the decades, to the extent that I think in 1994, didn't they, Mark? They tried to do it again.
They had a 25th anniversary one, promoted by Michael Lang, the same promoter, and it was a bit of a disaster. I think it was terrible weather and the fences broke down, and they just didn't make any money out of it.
So 5 years later,
when they embarked on this one, 5 years later, the key thing, it's Michael Lang again, former kind of hippie, now turned fairly hard-nosed businessman, and a guy called John Scher. And they decide, first of all, that the main priority has got to be profit, don't they? So that's the thing.
And to be fair, not losing your shirt is
fair enough.
It's quite honourable.
No, it's really completely honourable. But to a fairly advanced extent, that they eventually find, don't they, an Air Force base, a military complex, Griffiths Air Force Base in Rome, New York. Not the most idyllic place, because the old Woodstock in Yazga's farm was wonderful rolling hills, and this is tarmac.
But the first thing that qualifies, the Air Force Base to be used as a site for Woodstock '99 is, like all good Air Force bases, it's got a fence round it.
Yeah.
So it's an area that you enter. You can only enter via the gates, and you can only get out the same way.
It's already got a perimeter fence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes a big difference.
But they immediately decided, didn't they, that they would sell off all the food. I mean, obviously, this is a great way of making money. One of the key ways of making money for festival promoters is the franchises. You pay a certain amount to have your stall. But they just basically give over all that food, drink, security, etc., to other parties, having no control over it. Actually, no, that's not true. They did have control of the security, didn't they? Because they employ their own security. Yeah. So anybody going to this thing, 250,000 people turn up. First thing that happens is they have their food and drink confiscated. Do you remember?
Yep.
Which is amazing. So you're going into 3 days in baking heat, on tarmac, and you've now got to buy all your food and drink. And then a rather alarm to discover the bottle of water by the end is costing you $12, a small bottle of water. Yeah. So that's not very good. There's a lovely bit where they talk about the culture of the time. American Pie and Fight Club and the big movies. And there's that idea of kind of frat mentality. The other thing that has a lot of effect on it is the choice of bands, because the bands are basically Korn, Rage Against the Machine, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Bands that are
Limp Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit. This is quite aggressive, quite full on.
Kid Rock. Kid Rock.
This is quite white male music. It's not peace and love. It's not Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, No. And so you've got a huge crowd of people, aren't particularly festival goers. They're people who just want to see those particular bands. And the emphasis, they're constantly being told when they arrive that this is going to be the party of a lifetime, isn't it? Yeah. Get out there, make a racket, get pissed, go mental. And also, it's being filmed by MTV, and they do. And it's being filmed by MTV, which is interesting because MTV and rock at that stage, there's a certain amount of tension. They associate MTV with the Backstreet Boys, don't they? So MTV cameras moving among them and MTV announcers coming on stage actually antagonises the rock fans even more. But anyway. And there's an ominous star when James Brown comes on. Do you remember? Oh, God, James Brown comes on and refuses to go on stage until he's got all his money. And they just call his bluff. And he's about 10 minutes go by, but when he just refuses to go on and eventually is just forced on. And that seems to be a bad start. That's the kind of relationship they've got with these groups, But anyway, Limp Bizkit go on and just incite a riot virtually, don't they? I mean, it's just trying to get this tanked up crowd to be as, energetic and possibly even aggressive as possible. Various of them encourage the throwing of rubbish, don't they?
Yeah.
They say, get your plastic bottles, throw them now. And you therefore have this giant crowd hyped up to the point of complete madness. And you expect that things will go wrong. And they do.
Oh, yeah. It gets worse over the weekend, doesn't it? Because I'm no festival goer, but you're an experienced festival goer. And you've always been quite wise in this respect. You always say, I leave on Sunday. I leave on Sunday.
No matter how well it's going, leave on Sunday.
Because what appears to happen with this is Friday night they have Corn, and that's kind of the big party, and everybody's got loads of energy, and nobody's got a terrible hangover yet. Saturday people start to get a bit jaded.
But Saturday they wake up.
Yeah. Sunday they're really pissed off.
But also on Saturday they've woken up, discover that they're just in this massive rubbish heap, aren't they? Surrounded by rubbish, overflowing toilets.
Of their own creation.
Of their own creation. The sewage has infected the drinking water and the bathing water. It is absolutely terrible. And as somebody says, once you realise that the people in charge of your environment don't care, then you don't care either. And they get to the point then where they're big, people there's a bit where there's somebody driving through the crowd in a little tiny kind of golf truck with rubbish bags saying, can you possibly help by, putting some rubbish in these bags? And they're going, I paid $150 for this. Why should I? And so the whole relationship between the audience and everybody is getting worse and worse and worse. And they think they have been monumentally ripped off, which to some extent they really have, haven't they? It's just an appalling thing. They start to take it out.
They're a fairly unlovable audience, to be fair.
Oh, God, and when Fatboy Slim comes on playing to, they claim 60,000 people in a disused aircraft hangar, which in itself just brings you out terrible palpitations, thinking what a security risk that is. And he has to be just bust out of there as fast as possible for his own safety, doesn't he? Because somebody hijacks a lorry and drives it into the crowd very slowly. They're not knocking anybody out. It's the miracle. Nobody died in this event.
Well, that's apparently the case, which is amazing when you watch the film. You think, I can't believe there weren't multiple casualties.
Yeah.
Because, towards it gets even worse on the Sunday with Red Hot Chili Peppers, because somebody has the barking mad idea that you're going to turn this frat boy fest into a kind of celebration of peace and love and anti-gun violence by handing out 100,000 candles.
That's right, they're all going to light. The irony here is they've spent the last few days taking any flammable objects off any members of the audience and now give them candles.
And what do you think they do with those candles, listeners? What do you think?
Very obediently, they light them.
They start fires. with the result that the Red Hot Chili Peppers have to depart the stage while things calm down.
And are then told to go back on stage.
Come back on, and Red Hot Chili Peppers show their immense maturity in being equal to this moment of maximum public hazard by playing the Jimi Hendrix song "Fire."
Yeah.
At
which point, really gigantic fires break out. And then they announce that it's the end of the festival. At this stage, a rumour has been going around that there's going to be some special guest at the end. It's going to be Michael Jackson, or it's going to be Prince, or whoever. So everyone has this expectation it's going to be some huge finale. And that doesn't happen. The place is on fire. So at that point, a security tower is pulled down. You remember that?
With people on it.
People on it. With people actually on it. Incredibly, nobody is maimed or loses their life. It's absolutely solid. They then set fire to a row of lorries. They set fire to a load of gas canisters. They break into the kind of vendor village, don't they? Where there are people who've been selling merchandise all weekend with up to $70,000 in cash, fleeing for their lives. There's kind of robbery. There's arson. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable. And you have to see it, don't you? I mean, I just thought it was extraordinary.
It struck me there's two ways to make a festival film. One is you make the original festival film like Monterey or Woodstock or whatever, where the message of the film is, this was a triumph.
Yeah.
And then the other way is you make a film that says, this was a disaster. And this clearly was a disaster.
Even though the promoters, of course, are constantly saying, as they have to, just a few bad apples.
To be fair, they interview Michael Lang and John Schur. This is years later. And Michael Lang, it was the last, he died not long after.
I think in January this year, yeah.
Not long after the film was completed. And you have to give these guys points for the fact that they were prepared to sit there and be interviewed about.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Which you wouldn't have thought they had to.
No.
It would have been quite easy to hide. And so they're interviewed about it. And more tellingly, a number of festival goers are interviewed about it. And these are people who, there's a young woman who, I think she's about 16 when she went to it.
Oh, yes.
So she's now kind of 40.
Yeah.
She got a daughter of her own or something. And they got, two young guys from a small town. And they all went there in their own particular way. And they all said the same thing, which was, it was the best weekend of my life.
Best weekend of my life. I know. And then you cut to this image of the state troopers arriving. The place on fire. It's an inferno. This absolute catastrophe. And they said we've never had more fun. So would you go again? Oh yes. so it does end on a reasonably high note.
But now the other undercurrent of this is it's real kind of it's the high point of some bro culture. So what is extraordinary is that all these guys are going around with their shirts off and backwards baseball caps, chest bumping each other. And I tell you what the thing is, every time you see a camera, because don't forget, this is before, and you can't say this too often while watching this film, this is before social media.
Yeah.
This is before that.
Because it makes you think that if this happened now, then people would complain on social media. They wouldn't take it out on the event.
It wouldn't happen in the same way.
Yeah.
Because people's behaviour has been changed by social media.
Yeah.
Because, there's all these people, male and female, taking their shirts off. And as soon as there's a camera anywhere near, they do, kind of devil horns and they go, Woodstock 99, baby!
Yeah. Yeah.
As if repeating the name of the event had some kind of special significance to it. And, and female performers, Sheryl Crow gets a pretty rough ride, but not as rough as Jewel gets.
Oh, unbelievable.
Jewel departs the stage absolutely shaken, doesn't she?
Really tears, isn't she? Yeah.
Just absolutely
it's horrible. Horrible bunch of frat boys.
Yeah. Just, terrible behaviour. And the thing that struck me while watching it, I know we whinge about, what a kind of prim, censorious age we live in right now, and we do. But when you look at that film, you think, the reason we do that is that's a reaction to that time. You know what I mean? It's like it went as far as it could possibly go in the late 90s.
Yeah, it really did.
You know, and everybody was thinking, oh, we can't make too much noise. We can't be too extreme, you know. Let's try absolutely everything. And in cases
it's a kind of absolute low point, isn't it? It's a low point in terms of human behaviour and attitude and the exploitation of fans and everything. That's the only good news, is that since then, surely things have massively improved. But as you're right, had there been social media, people would have been tweeting about it, and something would have been done immediately, because they'd be tweeting from the inside saying, this is how awful this is.
Well, you see, I don't think you wouldn't even get that far nowadays, you know, because people organising anything, they're aware of the fact that criticism can turn just like that.
Yeah.
Can't they? You know, whereas it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that in those days. So, you know, think of your favourite Hieronymus Bosch painting.
Imagine Limp Bizkit performing in the middle of it.
That is Trainwreck, Woodstock 99.
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
I'm looking at my favourite new Twitter feed, Mark. Have you seen Celebrity
I have.
Jets?
I love it.
Celebrity Jets. Somebody's done us all the invaluable social service of telling us, where the private jets of various celebrities are and where they've just taken off from them and where they're landing. And
this is a student guy from University of Central Florida, isn't it, called Jack Sweeney. And I think Elon Musk was so fed up that he kept posting live whenever an Elon Musk jet took off with all the deals, that he offered him the miserly sum of $5,000 to stop doing it. And he said, that, mate, is not enough. And he's not going to stop anyway. So he just posts, doesn't he? He posts.
I'll give you an example. 6 hours ago, Tom Cruise's Challenger 300 landed near Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's approximate flight time from wherever it came from. I can't remember. It was 2 hours, 59 minutes. He occasionally does calculations of how much fuel's involved in these things.
Oh, no, the fuel is really interesting. Yeah, Tom Cruise, I think day before yesterday, that same jet took off and landed in Kerry in Ireland, I think it was. And it was 64 gallons of fuel for a 44-mile flight. Jay-Z's jet did a 12-mile flight the other day. 139 gallons, 937, 1 ton of CO2 emissions. It's amazing, isn't it?
I tell you, it's really funny. I was talking to my son's wife only last night. She'd been to the theatre this week. She'd been to see Jerusalem, with Mark Rylance.
Oh, wonderful!
And she said Tom Cruise was in the row in front, And I said, really? Who was he with? She said, I think he's with Jez Butterworth, who wrote Jerusalem, and probably a security man. And I was saying, well, Tom Cruise does kind of get around, He doesn't shy away from the public, and he doesn't really. To be fair, Tom Cruise turns up at places, but in between. He's taking the most exclusive possible means of getting from A to B, isn't he? It's the private jet.
It's
takes
incredible,
him absolutely everywhere.
And there's such short flights. Spielberg uses one all the time. Well, I mean, then again, it's just logging their jet. They may not be on it. It may be that they're, there's one amazing statistic. See if I can find it about Taylor Swift. Oh, here. Taylor Swift. From January the 1st, she is a major user of the private jet. Between January the 1st and July the 30th, they said that there was 78 records of her flights. But another source says there were 170 flights on her jet. I mean, 170. It's astonishing, isn't it? And a lot of those are just literally 15 miles.
I think it's a really interesting new source of, people love talking about inequality and so forth, and the fabulous sums that big sports stars or music stars or film stars earn. And people say, well, that's a reflection of their commercial value and so forth. Private jet use, this is a different thing, isn't it?
Totally.
Because it's like saying, it's not enough for me to go business class. Actually, it's not even enough for me to go first class. Because I don't want to be with anybody else at all. I don't want to have to deal with any of the. And once you start,
I know,
I've never
because
done
that's
it.
the old thing,
Now
is
I'm
it?
going to. Mark Ellen, you've done it, haven't you? You once flew private jet. Go on.
Oh, I have. No, I was going to say, once you start, it's exactly the same as I once flew business class. And once you do that, you never want to turn right again.
Absolutely.
It's ruined you forever. And I have been on a private jet. Well, I went on the U2's private jet. Well, that's a pretty substantial plane. That's the whole band and the crew and all that. But there's something very, very exciting about it.
Oh, I bet.
They finished their show. It was at the Velodrome in Boston. And they would do a thing called doing a runner, and they had to break their record to see how fast they could get from the venue to the plane and to get that plane in the air. And they got to the venue, got to the plane, I think, in 7 minutes. And I think we were in the air in about something like 14 or 15 minutes. Because, of course, you're getting on you don't have to show any passes or any tickets. You just pile on. Somebody hands you a flute of the finest champagne and you're in the air. And, of course, once you do that, the idea of queuing up for even a first-class flight, because it's a commercial flight, and commercial flights are obviously a liability now anyway, aren't they? Yeah. They're massively delayed and they're problematic, and airports are a misery. So you can see, but it's still pretty reprehensible, isn't it, really?
Well, it is reprehensible if it's the same people who are, they've always got a track on the new album talking about saving the planet.
Yeah.
They're really keen to be seen, being on the right side of green issues, but not so keen to be seen in the same airport as anybody else. Hence this really good Twitter feed, Celeb Jets.
Jets, it's gripping.
Which we recommend to you. And probably, if you looked long enough, I'm sure you'd see flights taken by Beyoncé, who's been in the news in the last week. Have you heard the Beyoncé new album, modestly titled Renaissance?
No, I haven't, but I'm aware of the Controve, of which there's quite a lot. I think something about the non-creative samples as well. But it's all sorts of. But the main thing is she's had to re-record a track, hasn't she?
Well, she did redo something.
She's re-recorded the track "Heated" for using an expression that she claims has not quite the same meaning. Can we say what it is? I think we can.
Surely we can, for goodness sake.
It's spaz is the word she uses. Spaz or spazzing, which she says means something completely different in America. But, obviously to anybody British listening to that, you think that's absolutely appalling. How could it have got that far?
How could it have got that far? That's the point.
Without anybody saying, hang on a second, are you sure this won't cause problems? Because it's now been withdrawn and it's being re-recorded, isn't it?
So it's the other thing is that this record, people have been pointing out that that some of the tracks have got as many as 25 different writers.
Yeah,
and if people draw attention to this, they say no, you can't draw attention to this because that's sort of racist almost. That you're trying to apply the rules of kind of, I don't know, white pop music to a new way of doing things. I'll tell you what, I was thinking about this yesterday. If you accept that you can have 25 hands involved in the authoring of a piece of music, surely you can no longer have one hand involved in the authoring of a piece of music. Because one or the other of those ways of doing it can't be true. Do you see what I mean? If you're saying that over here you've got 25 people to do it, well, how is it possible one person did it over here? It's probable in my view that neither of those extremes are the truth. That most pieces of music, recorded music, we have the convention of songwriter, which goes back to Tin Pan Alley and Broadway and so forth, which probably doesn't reflect the way the most records are made nowadays, and that their secret sauce is supplied not just by the person who wrote the song, not just by the person who sang it, but the people who played on it, people who had ideas towards it, people who arranged bits of it. And it's possibly true that all those people's, contributions should be recognised. But I can't believe it's one extreme, it's one person alone, and at the other extreme, it's 25 people equally. One of
So
those
you
things
think it's
come
very
true.
unlikely that when only one person is credited, that one person didn't get any kind of assistance? Because I find that hard to imagine.
Well, surely they must have done.
They must have done. I mean, there's a moment in Get Back when Ringo Starr comes in with Octopus's Garden, and all he's got is 4 chords.
Yes.
And George Harrison just picks up, and he hasn't really got any words or anything like that. And George Harrison picks up guitar and says, well, why don't you do it like this? And just plays him a completed sequence of those chords with extra bits thrown in. And actually just literally in 30 seconds rewrites the song. He doesn't get a credit on that.
No.
It's a credit entirely to Ringo Starr. So it gives you an idea of just how much collaboration goes on all the time. And, you'd just imagine that, you're absolutely right. Very few people can, on their own, just create something, I would have thought.
You would have thought there's very few cases of that, but that's just the tradition, isn't it? That's the way it works. That's the way, it's been decided that kind of credit is given and people make fortunes out of things because they got the name on them. But, if you end up with 25 on a track, well, there's only one way that's going, which is the next time is 35.
It's going to be 35.
And the next time after that is 45. It's as simple as that.
The word podcast. Clearly, there is no plan.
So here's a funny thing. I happen to see that there is a new film called Waiting the Van Duren Story. And it's made by a couple of Australians, I think. And it's one of these films kind of in the tradition of, do you remember that film Searching for Sugar Man?
Oh, it's exactly like that. Sixto Rodriguez. Yeah.
Where it's the idea that it's a musician has disappeared.
They tracked him down, didn't they, to a huge success in South Africa. And he'd apparently completely disappeared in the American mainland. It's amazing. So this is the same sort of thing, isn't it?
Well,
it's the Van Duren story. He had a group with Chris Bell and Jodie Stevens of Big Star. Is that right?
I'll tell you the story because I thought Van Duren, that rings a bell. And I'm thinking, didn't I have a record by Van Duren? And so I went looking in my stack of records, and I have a theory, Mark, that I've often bored you with. And it was borne out once again, that there are certain records that you're never supposed to be parted from. And that the great presiding deity of vinyl makes sure that you never throw away or get rid of or sell anything that you might ultimately regret.
And then one day you will just be magically reconnected with them for a reason.
So I went and I looked. And sure enough, among the V's, there is
between Van Morrison and Van Halen. There was
there. It's a record called "Are You Serious?" Now, let me tell you the story of this record, Mark. And this record made in 1977. He's a Memphis-based musician. In 1978, so 1978, Mark. When Jim Callaghan was the Prime Minister of the UK, I went to Memphis, Tennessee, and I went to see Alex Chilton. And while in a record shop in Memphis, Tennessee, with a guy who was a kind of mate of Alex Chilton's and knew the kind of old Big Star University, said, "Oh, you ought to listen to this. There's a record by a guy called Van Duren." And he was kind of on the fringes of Big Star, in later versions of Big Star, And I bought this record, and I brought it home to the UK, and I probably played it twice, and never thought of any more about it. Put it away in my records. In the years I used to do a radio program on GLR. I never played that record, never got it out at all. So that record is sat over there, Mark. Jim Callaghan.
Virtually.
Hold on. I want to give you an idea of how long it stayed there, right? Yeah. Jim Callaghan, Margaret Thatcher, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, almost over, yeah? So effectively, I didn't even count. That's a lot of
7 prime ministers.
That's a lot of prime ministers.
Van Duren is sat unloved, unnoticed.
Absolutely unnoticed. And until this film came out, and I thought, well, I just got it outplayed, and it's quite nice. It's all right, you know what I mean? It's you know, if you're really deep into Big Star and things like, you'd no doubt like it. But here's the interesting thing, and I think it illustrates something about what's happening in pop music, is that there's less and less focus, it seems to me, on the new, and more focus on trying to find something uncelebrated in the old.
Because it automatically has some kind of soulful originality, some kind of legend, some kind of folklore attached to it, doesn't it?
But is it possible, is it conceivable that after years of pop music being all about the hot new thing, that people stop putting out hot new things, and that now in future pop music will be, you know, it's like kind of 19th century literature. It's all there. You've just got to find the
got to go and find it.
You just got to come find it.
Prioritise.
It's in a great big pile somewhere, you know. So even I've got the damn record, and I haven't played it. You know what I mean? It's been sitting over there. And nothing has made me go out and get it. You know what I mean? And I think that's increasingly how music is going to be.
So if you were a member of Trees or whatever, actually Trees is quite a good example.
Trees is really
are
good
now being celebrated, aren't
Absolutely.
they? People are suddenly discovering Trees and going, these are amazing records. So any of those old psychedelic bands, you know, the late 60s, you put out a record that sold 9 copies, must just be thinking, maybe one day I'll be picked up on it.
And it's not unlikely.
We'll reform.
It's not unlikely if you look on the streaming services, you know, Spotify or Apple Music or any of these things. People are constantly creating, you know, groovy little lists that have, you know, kind of some stuff you've heard of, some stuff you've hardly half heard of, some stuff you haven't heard of at all.
Yeah.
And you know, it seems to me that world of streaming seems to be dominated by that kind of sort of mojo-ish type,
It is.
kind of new traditionalist thing. It's absolutely astonishing, you know, and the likes of Van Duren are beneficiaries of it, you know, for a brief moment in time. But as apparently these guys making this film pretty much had to pitch it like Searching for Sugar Man, which is, this guy has disappeared. Because the truth was, he hadn't disappeared at all. Because during the time of all those prime ministers, and no doubt similar numbers of American presidents, this guy had stayed in Memphis, Tennessee, and had been playing pretty much every week, you know, ever since.
But that was the same with Sixto Rodriguez, wasn't it? Really, they said he totally and utterly disappeared. He's working at a factory in Memphis. Actually, no, he'd had some success in Australia. He'd done some Australian tours, but they very carefully edited that out of the film. We'll never mention it because it would ruin the story. Fair enough.
You can't, and here's another point. Presumably, you can no longer disappear in pop music. You can't.
No, I can't imagine you do.
Because Google is going to find you, isn't it?
Someone will be paying you the odd royalties to some address somewhere, and they'll know where you are.
Well, it's not even the royalties; it's social media will find them.
Yeah.
You know, if you put out a call on Twitter this morning saying, you know, whatever happened to the bass player of Matthew's Southern Comfort, within half an hour, somebody is going to go, he's my postman.
They'll be knocking on your door.
He lives down my road. Do you know what I mean? Did I tell you about B.J. Cole? Did I tell you that?
No, go on.
So B.J. Cole, the great British pedal steel player, you know, there's only one B.J. Cole. He's played on millions of records over the years. And I live in North London, and people have said to me for years, oh, he doesn't live far from you. And I went to a little sort of beer shop not long ago down here. We don't have pubs. You have, you know, kind of, you know, those kind of things like beer houses, whatever. And as I'm looking at the notice board, they go playing here next Friday, B.J. Cole.
Fantastic. Playing in a beer shop. That's brilliant. Just there, 14.
That's fantastic.
I love it.
Nobody disappears at all. So there you go. That's Van Duren.
We should mention the great Judith Durham. Don't you think?
We should.
My Lord. I've got such fond memories of the Seekers. I mean, the Seekers first had their hits when I must have been about 9.
I bet your mum and dad like the Seekers.
Of course they loved them. They loved the Seekers. Everybody's mum and dad. And I can remember them being the first group that I appreciated were square, if you like,
Yes.
that were straight, that were ostensibly boring and aimed for your parents. But there was still something about those songs that I absolutely love. The carnival is over. They had their catalogue, their whole signature was slightly mournful, wasn't it? Slightly wistful, slightly sorrowful tunes. I'll never find another you. You know, and they had that sort of, there was a kind of forced cheeriness on occasions that reminds you of the kind of pastiche films in The Mighty Wind. You know, that kind of, those kind of folk, everyone, folk groups putting on a show. But I thought they were absolutely brilliant. And she was so square. Judith Durham looked like the kind of girl who, I don't know, did crocheting or made Victoria sponges.
She looked like an art teacher.
An art teacher, a little bit groovy. And I thought they were fantastic. And you and I were texting about her yesterday, and we both mentioned the word stirring.
That was the thing about
stirring voice.
Stirring sound. I remember Danny Kelly saying this to me. Danny Kelly tweeted yesterday and said, I've always loved Judith Durham. I thought she was one of the greatest singers ever. And I said that long before anybody talked about guilty pleasures. And he did, to be fair.
He did?
Danny.
I can remember.
I remember Danny telling me this
30 years ago.
That he thought she was a fantastic singer, and she was a fantastic singer, and has that quality of to being able to stir the soul. And I tell you, the other singer, sort of kind of near contemporary of hers, who similarly had that.
Oh, I wonder if it's the same as mine. How funny.
Well, I'll go first.
Go on.
Mama Cass.
Oh, okay. No, it's not the same.
Well, who's yours? Go on.
Mine's Joan Baez.
Oh, okay.
Joan Baez, but then Joan Baez stirring in a way that it had a certain folk protest element about it.
It did.
You know, it had a kind of earnestness about it. Yeah. But no, Mama Cass, that's true.
Mama Cass just had that kind of open-throated, soulful, but very, very white, really. You know, it was genuinely moving sound, Mama Cass singing, getting better and things like that. And Judith Durham, very much the same thing. So, you know, isn't it?
And when they split up, the New Seekers was born out of it, wasn't it?
Well, right? It was Keith Potcher was the kind of leader of the Seekers. I think he's the guy who put it together. And then, because they came from Australia, didn't they? And then they kind of they must have had some success in Australia, but obviously made it really big here. And then when Keith Potcher decided to kind of knock it on the head, he started the New Seekers. And the New Seekers were a kind of slightly sexier, slightly younger, you know, glitzier, a bit more glam version of the Seekers, weren't they? With no folk roots whatsoever. They were, I'd like to teach the world to sing, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
That was their thing. But, you know,
still pretty staid and still very middle of the road. No, the Seekers made you know, Peter, Paul, and Mary look like real ravers. they were terribly kind of formal and old fashioned and really attractive. I thought they were fantastic.
You're listening to the Word Podcast, where the time is whenever you want it to be.
So, any other business? Alex Gold, there he is.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Hey ho. We have a new strand, don't we, Magic, that we're going to be advancing soon.
We do. We have an exciting new in-person element that we'll be adding to our existing array of frankly marvellous Patreon benefits.
Let's run through these Patreon benefits one more time, shall we, Alex? Let's remind people.
Okay, so first of all, there is the quiz tier, whereby for a nominal sum per month, you get to take part in our legendary weekly quiz, which we've done every single Friday since 2020.
Since time began.
Yes.
Since time began. And then there is the podcast
hundreds
tier.
of them. And can I just say, they're really good. The quizzes are really entertaining. We get a fantastic gang turn up every Friday night. We have a lot of fun. They're brilliant. And quite challenging.
Yep.
Then we have the podcast tier, which grants you access to the quiz and also gets you this very podcast early before the rest of the world gets it, which is definitely a good thing. And then if that wasn't enough already, there's the classic podcast tier, which gets you all that plus this very podcast early with full visuals, a full multi-sensory experience, which can blow your mind week after week. And a classic podcast whereby we dig through the archives tracing back 14 years, I think.
It is.
To revisit the best, what we think are the best podcasts of that time, with a current spin on them. And then there is the birthday tier, which is kind of the creme de la creme of the tier world.
Top of the heap.
Oh yeah. Now, this tier gets you a special birthday visit digitally from Mark and Dave, who will delightedly rummage through your record collections in your very own videocast.
It's very good fun. You simply find all the old records and bits of ephemera that you've collected, and we do it on Zoom, like the Word in Your Attic thing.
It has to be said, to be fair, we enjoy it, don't we, Mark?
Oh, we love doing it.
We do.
We've met some really
brilliant.
interesting people, and we're always inspired to go off and listen to records that they recommend, and people have such extraordinary things. We talked to someone not long ago who suddenly produced the actual military hat worn by Loudon Wainwright.
Yes.
On one of his album covers. And for some reason he finished up owning this thing and produced it. Just incredible.
We celebrated the birthday of an actual rocking vicar, haven't we?
We have.
Yes, we have.
And, we've learnt all kinds of things, you know. We do a further thing, which is if you're a Patreon supporter and you happen to be involved in a kind of commercial endeavour which has some consumer product at the end of it, if you send that consumer product to us, particularly if it's something that we can consume on the air, we will consume
Which
it
we
on
did
the
last
air.
week with some very
And
attractive
talk about-
ale.
Very attractive ale from the Ink Spot beer joint in Newbiggin up in the northeast. And so, you know, if that happens to apply to you, that's even more reason why you ought to be a Patreon supporter. And so, as Alex was about to add, we're introducing a new physical space live meetup element, aren't we? In the near future,
We are.
So further
Around
details.
Christmas time.
Further details of that will be winging their way to you. So if you want to know how you can get involved in any of those things, the place to look at is patreon.com/word in your ear. Repeat after me. Patreon.com/word in your ear. Do it right now.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.